College Survival 101, Effective Tutoring, Using Note-Taking and Graphic Organizers to Succeed, Tutor Training Number 4. There are times as a tutor that you will need to work on more than simply reviewing and/or reteaching the content knowledge of your course. There may be times when you may be paired with a student who also needs support with their study skills. This training aims to provide you with some tools and strategies to support students with note-taking, organizing their notes, and using graphic organizers to make better sense of their notes. Think about when you first started here as a freshman. Chances are that the jump from high school to college was somewhat jolting. You may have felt like your high school did not prepare you well for lecture-style classes and the amount of note-taking needed to be successful in some classes. You probably developed and refined your own note-taking skills over time in order to create a system that worked for you. Taking notes helps a learner retain what they are hearing. It actively engages them in listening and processing what they are hearing. It adds to their file of information on the topic, and it helps to make connections between what they already know and what they are learning presently. It's an important survival skill in college. I am going to share with you several tools that fall under the categories of note-taking and graphic organizers. Some of these can be used right in the classroom as the professor is teaching, but all of these can be used in a tutoring session as tools to help organize the notes that your student brings to it. The end of this training will offer some tips that you can share with your student on how to better take notes in their classes. First, the Cornell method. This note-taking method was designed by Cornell University and is very popular because it creates a review and study tool. It is systematic in condensing and organizing one's notes into 3 sections of the paper. What I am showing you here can be set up prior to going to class, either in a spiral notebook or even by printing out blank copies of this format online and using a 3-ring binder. Or it can be used after class as a way to rewrite and reorganize one's notes. In either case, the paper is divided into 3 sections. The main section is where the notes are taken or rewritten. The narrow column to the left is where cue words and questions related to the notes are written. For example, key questions, vocabulary words, main ideas, leading phrases, etc. are written here. Down below, the notes from the main section are summarized in paragraph form using the learner's own words. Notes are taken during class, or as I mentioned, rewritten after. Then, to the left, the student should add cues to self-test these notes. When it comes time to review, the notes are covered over and the student tries to remember all they can based on the cues. Reviewing their summaries also helps them study. Here are 2 examples of the Cornell method being used. The one on the left is for algebra and the one on the right is in chemistry. As you can see, both pages are divided into 3 sections, with the main section being the area for note-taking. The narrow columns on the left have questions that the students have written in to jog their memory to cue them to their notes, and below they've each written a summary. So when it comes time to study, they block off that notes section. They see if they can recall what is on the notes by answering the questions, and in the case of the algebra paper, trying to recall example 1 and example 2, and then they can reread their summaries below to also help them study. By doing this, they are using the actual pages that they took notes on as study tools to study for their exams. And although these 2 examples don't show it, you can also put keywords, key vocabulary, and other main ideas on that left side as cueings to remember what your notes say. Okay, the double entry journal for note-taking. People either love or hate this one. Again, a paper can be set up ahead of class time, or because this simply divides the paper in half, be set up right on the spot. It can also be used for rewriting one's notes. The basic premise of this note-taking style is that it is to simulate both hemispheres of the brain, the left side with language, reasoning, and logic, and the right side with insight, thoughtfulness, creativity, etc. Class notes, or textbook notes, are taken and written out on the left side of the paper, leaving space between them. After the notes have been written or rewritten, the learner reviews them and adds questions, thoughts, connections, confusions, insight, even pictures and illustrations for each one on the right side, as they attempt to make sense of the notes and connect them to meaningful learning. So it is basically a note-taking system of content and response. Here are examples of two double-entry journals. The first is for math and the second for a business class. You can see on the first that the note-taker has taken notes on different types of graphs on the left side of the sheet. This could have been in class during a lecture or possibly even while reading the textbook. It could also have been after class as the note-taker cleaned up his notes from class. The right side of the page is where the note-taker has asked questions about his notes or made a connection or insight about what he's written on the left. In the business example, quotes from a reading have been placed on the left side, and the student's thoughts, interpretations, insights, connections, and opinions about those quotes written on the right. Outlining. I'm personally a fan of outlining because I tend to think and learn linearly, and I like the clean lines from this note-taking. Good outlining is somewhat of a learned art and may take time to master. It flows from the general to the more specific, indenting along the way. Technology and software like Word or Google Docs has made outlining quick and easy because it will do the indenting for you once you've set your document up for it. With outlining, like a lot of these tools, the strategy is sometimes better used as an after-class clean up my notes technique. Trying to outline in the moment can be tricky, but rewriting notes using this form can make them very clean and linear and easy to study from. If you or your student thinks better when information is clustered or in color, concept mapping may be useful. Concept maps start with the key idea in the center and then branch in clusters in different directions, adding sub-ideas and details. Adding color to each cluster gives that concept individuality, and concept maps can be also useful for pre-writing as an organizational tool, each cluster representing a paragraph. Again, it is a useful strategy for rewriting notes. I love this one. It has color to separate, yet linear thoughts for each cluster. You can easily imagine creating an essay from this map or using it to study one concept at a time prior to an exam. Sometimes all notes need is a simple charting system to organize them. Charts are pretty self-explanatory, and unless the professor was giving notes in chart form in class, I would recommend that your student create their own charts after class as they clean up their notes. The next couple of slides will show various sequential organizers. Depending on the course, a linear timeline for, say, a history course, or a flow chart for evaluating a patient in a nursing class, or a cyclical organizer for a scientific closed system, is a visual way to represent a sequence. The last of the graphic organizers I'll share here is the Venn diagram. Everyone probably remembers the Venn from elementary through high school. Venns can compare 2, 3, 4, or even more concepts, though I personally feel like a Venn diagram with more than 3 circles is confusing and too visually busy. With all Venns, the overlap space shows common attributes, and the separate spaces reflect how the concepts are different from one another. Switching gears, I want to help you support your students in improving their note-taking abilities in class. Knowing a few tricks of the trade can help students become better note-takers. So when needed and appropriate, teach these to your students. Listen for pauses. Professors usually pause before or after an important idea. Write down what the professor writes up on the board or overhead. It's important. Write down what the professor repeats over and over in class. It's important. And listen for leading phrases like a critical point, or remember that, or anything that leads into something that the professor is about to say that is important. Teach them to mark their notes with a star or an arrow when the professor is emphasizing something in class. Teach them to always write down the examples that the professor gives or writes up on the board. And teach them transitional words and phrases, like therefore, finally, furthermore. These usually signal an important idea. Teach your students to listen for signal words that lead to main ideas or points. Phrases like, there are 3 reasons why. Anytime a professor uses first, second, third. Anytime a professor uses most important or major development. These all signal something important to write down. Other signal words to teach your students. On the other hand, for example, for instance, furthermore, in contrast. Signal words like these are supporting material. They show similarity or they show contrast, but they indicate something important to write down. And finally, teach your students to listen for signal words that indicate summary or conclusion. Any word or phrase like therefore, in conclusion, finally, in summary. Anything like that indicates something important to write down because it is a summarization of what the professor has been talking about. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video on graphic organizers and note-taking. If you would like any more information on anything presented here, please reach out to me and I'd be happy to help you develop the strategy. Thank you.